Every president privately and sometimes publicly bridles at his news coverage. And yet they invite us in and take our questions. Though, sir, maybe not as many as we would like.
Joining me now, John Solomon, award-winning investigative journalist, also has a book out, Brave Books. We love Brave Books, called Hidden Headlines. John, this White House Correspondents' Dinner, it always ends up making the American people cringe as all the elites gather in one room and laugh about how they just hide the truth from us on a daily basis.
Yeah, listen, it's the ultimate example of the synergy between the bureaucracy, the Democratic leadership, and the Democratic media. And they celebrate themselves once a year, even though they're unaware, I think, most days, how much the American public despise the work they've done. They actually are angry at the news media for repeatedly misinforming the American public, keeping us from having information vital to elections, keeping us from information vital to COVID. They celebrate themselves because their audience won't celebrate them anymore.
Could you, you're one of the few journalists left. There just aren't many of them in the country. And it really bothers me because I do view journalism, as much as we hate these people, as a critical profession, especially when you have people in power and corruption. It is critical that someone is out there tracking down this information and exposing it, and that we don't have that in this country in any real major level is a big reason why we've gotten so corrupt, in my opinion.
Yeah, listen, that check and balance. Our founding fathers saw the free press as an important counterbalance to a government, any size government. They hoped it was going to be a small government. Obviously, it's blown up and become big, which makes the counterbalance all the more important. And for most of our last 100, 150 years, the press was a good counterbalance. It gave us Watergate. It exposed Tuskegee experiments and things like that. In the era just really about the Barack Obama era, when that began, and then going into the Trump era, all of a sudden the political press corps, particularly in Washington, became the opposite of a counterbalance. It became the additional weight to hijack a singular narrative in America, so that if you weren't the authorized narrative in America in 2019, I wasn't that narrative because I dared to write about Hunter Biden. I got canceled for a while. If you weren't part of the crowd, you weren't part of the official narrative, all of a sudden it wasn't just the Democratic establishment attacking you, it was the news media. Listen, when I started writing Hunter Biden stories, there were reporters going through my neighborhood suggesting to my neighbors that I was a Russian spy or a Russian asset. I had won tons of awards as a journalist, some of the most prestigious journalists. All of a sudden, no one would stand up and defend me. And it perplexed me for a while. Then I realized something. There's a new generation of journalists, and they went through a school system that didn't teach the valuable civic lessons of why the First Amendment was first to our founding fathers, that the Bill of Rights was important. They came through a school system that suggested that free speech was negotiable and that there'd be moments in history where a government could silence its people for the good of a collective. That is the dangerous moment that our education system left us with. And that's why I wrote this book. I wrote this book to give parents and grandparents a counter story, which is, let's go back to the original civics lessons of America. Free speech is free for a reason, and we need it in this country.
Tell me about this book.
It's a really fun thing. Listen, a couple of years ago, my son, who's autistic, got a hamster, and I was entrusted with it for a week while my wife went away. I lost the hamster. I left the cage open like a little bit. He got out. I was mortified. I spent like 6 hours on my knees crawling around with a stethoscope looking to find him. I found him, got him back in the cage. I thought I had dodged a bullet. The next day, my co-host on television told the world I lost the hamster. My wife found out. We laughed about it. And then we said, you know what? I want to make this hamster something special. And so in this fun story, there's a newspaper publisher called Chunk. That's the name of my son's hamster. And he's trying to publish a newspaper, and the tubes in the hamster village are clogged. Those are social media allegories for that for the parents. And he can't get the news out that there's an impending flood that could endanger the city. And a brave dog, a curious brave dog, goes out of the way and solves the case and warns the folks, and people learn a valuable lesson about censorship. It's a fun story, but it really is an allegory driven by my own experiences. From 2019 to 2022, I was blocked from telling the Hunter Biden story, blocked from telling the laptop story, blocked from telling the original origins of COVID story. It wasn't the official narrative for all of those people at the dinner Saturday night, so we couldn't tell it in normal channels. And today, obviously, all three of those stories turned out to be true. we need to solve this issue of censorship in America before it imperils this great republic.
Finally, speaking of stories that go nowhere or get blocked, is this IRS whistleblower thing with Hunter Biden going somewhere? I just have no faith in this stuff anymore. I figure the guy's probably going to disappear or something.
I think he is, actually. A very important step was taken last week. Congress accepted his whistleblower complaint, which means he can now talk about tax privacy related information about Hunter Biden. Here is going to be the big story, Jesse. I think this is what is going to be the earthshake. We're going to learn from this whistleblower, I believe, based on my reporting, that the Justice Department had a broad criminal case against Hunter Biden that went all the way back to 2014 to tax failure to pay tax payments on his Burisma money. Remember when we told Burisma wasn't a big deal, it was a conspiracy theory? Hunter Biden didn't pay taxes on $400,000 of tax income. The government built a perfect case to go and pursue him, bring accountability, and somewhere in the process, a political appointee blocked not only the prosecution, they allowed the tolling agreement, the statute of limitations to expire so that the Biden family wouldn't have to answer for that big money from China and Ukraine and Russia that flowed in 14, 15, and 16. I think that's going to create an enormous amount of outrage in Congress, and I think it's already had an impact. You heard last week there were negotiations between Hunter Biden and the government. I think that meeting was spurred by the fact that they knew this whistleblower was about to become public.
John Solomon, I appreciate you, sir. Come back.
Thank you, Jesse. Love your show.